Hi everyone, welcome to the European history portion of the GDB class. My name is Ivan, and our topic today is the Italian Renaissance. The rise of the Italian city-states saw urban centers such as Florence, Venice, and Milan pop up. In these city-states, wealthy merchant oligarchies instead of hereditary kings governed these states. One of the main city-states in Italy was Florence, the acknowledged center of the Renaissance during the 15th century. Governing this city-state were the Medicis, wealthy bankers who dominated Florence's economic, political, and artistic life. Entering this new period of time, Europe was changing in order to follow the so-called Renaissance spirit. Let's now look at what the previous period of Europe looked like. Medieval thinkers firmly believed that God created the world to prepare humans for salvation or eternal damnation. Here, human lives were insignificant and there was no emphasis on the individual. However, come the Renaissance, this medieval mindset was brushed aside with new celebration of the individual. Instead of hereditary feudal nobles, Italian merchants had to work for their social rank instead of inheriting it. As a result, these merchants took pride in their individual achievements. Just like these merchants, Italian artists and writers wanted to be known and remembered as individuals, seeking fame as a reward for talent and skill. This led to the rise of popularity in portrait paintings and autobiographies, which showcased the individual personality and fame. One important aspect of the Italian Renaissance was the humanist scholars. These scholars scorned the medieval years by calling it the Dark Ages and instead focused on studying the classics, aka Greek and Roman literature, rhetoric, and history. Through these studies, humanist scholars wanted to gain a more practical understanding of human nature and enrich their own culture. A great example of humanism was Lorenzo Valla, the person who demonstrated that the donation of Constantine was a forgery. Compared to the emphasis on spiritual values and salvation during the medieval times, the Renaissance focused more on the pleasures of the material possessions. Wealthy Renaissance families openly enjoyed lavish lifestyles, including fine music, expensive foods, and works of art. Humanist education placed a new emphasis on studying the classics in order to learn about human nature and practical skills. Humanists believed that the curriculum would teach future leaders how to become eloquent and persuasive. This is seen through the famous humanist Baldassare Castiglione, where in his book, The Courtier, he explains how upper class men and women could become accomplished courtiers. This follows the ideal universal man idea, where the Renaissance humanists strove to become. Moving on, it is impossible not to discuss Machiavelli and his work titled The Prince when talking about the Italian Renaissance. First, some context as to why Machiavelli wrote The Prince. With Lorenzo the Magnificent's death in 1492, the golden age of Florence came to a close. With no strong leader, King Charles VIII of France invaded Italy to conquer Naples in 1494. Spain's King Ferdinand soon contested the French claim to Naples, starting the Habsburg-Valois Wars. During this time, the key to survival with these Italian city-states was through diplomacy and war. Second, the man himself, Niccolo Machiavelli, a Florentine diplomat, political philosopher, and the founder of modern political science. Seeing the devastation of Italy, Machiavelli wanted to see a strong leader who could bring Italy together and kick out the foreign invaders. Writing The Prince, Machiavelli advised Italian rulers on statecraft needed to unite his Italian homeland. Third, the context of The Prince. As Machiavelli had a pessimistic view of human nature, he decided that a prince must be ruthless and pragmatic in order to protect himself from traps and defend himself from others. Another important aspect of the Italian Renaissance is its art. The force behind the Renaissance art were the patrons, aka the people providing commissions to Renaissance artists such as the Catholic Church, guilds, and wealthy families. These patrons used the art to display their own wealth and fame. Renaissance artists had some distinct characteristics. First, let's talk about perspective. Perspective is a geometric method of creating the illusion of depth in a flat surface, as seen here in the painting. Second, chiaroscuro is the realistic bending of light and shade seen especially in Renaissance art. This feature creates the illusion of volume. Third, we have the pyramid configuration. Renaissance artists use the pyramid configuration to create symmetrical and balanced compositions. Fourth, the classical interpretation of Christian subjects. And many Renaissance artists attempt to revive classical standards of beauty in Christian subjects. Now let's see some examples. First up, Filippo Brunelleschi's Dome of the Florence Cathedral. Brunelleschi used his knowledge of Roman engineering to construct a 100 feet high dome, symbolizing Florence's piety, power, and ingenuity. Next, we have Michelangelo's David, a metaphor for Florence's victory over Milan. Afterwards, Raphael's school at Athens, showcasing many different philosophers with different periods of time. This work of art illustrates the Renaissance ideals of order, unity, and symmetry. Then, Pietro della Francesca's Federico de Montefeltro and Bautista Sforza, two state portraits celebrating the power of the aristocratic elite. Lastly, Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, including the famous creation of Adam, a visual symbol to the power of the Renaissance papacy. The Renaissance also saw a change in the female role in society. Humanist scholars debated about women's character, nature, and role in society. In this period of time, we saw the first feminist, Christine de Pizan, who was the first woman in European history to earn a living as an author. Pizan wrote in order to refute many masculine myths about women. However, humanism only advanced aristocratic women, as only well-to-do girls typically received a humanistic education similar to boys. This is seen through Castiglione and The Perfect Court Lady, where aristocratic women should be attractive, well-educated, able to paint, dance, and play a musical instrument. A noteworthy female figure was Isabella d'Este, the most famous Renaissance woman. She played an important role in smaller Renaissance courts and was an extremely famous art patron in her time, showing that educated Renaissance women were socially acceptable. Thank you for tuning in to our first episode. In the next episode, we'll be talking about the Northern Renaissance. Hi everyone, welcome to the second episode of our European history portion of the GDB class. I am Ivan and our topic today is the Northern Renaissance. The Northern Renaissance mostly took off when students and artists from Northern Europe traveled to Italy and had their first contact with the Italian Renaissance. From this movement, the Northern Humanists, or the Christian Humanists, closely studied classical sources and sought to give the humanism a Christian context. These Christian humanists wanted to combine the classical ideas of calmness and stoical patience with the Christian virtues of piety, humility, and love in order to see moral and institutional reform. Next, let's learn about some key figures in the Northern Renaissance. Desiderius Erasmus was the most influential humanist of the Northern Renaissance. Erasmus edited works for the Church Fathers and produced Greek and Latin editions of the New Testament. Erasmus is best known for the Praise of Folly, a satire that poked fun at influential individuals, such as merchants and church leaders, as the Pope Julius II. Erasmus wanted to reform the church from within, calling the church to return to a simple, essential Christianity. Thomas More was another leading humanist scholar. From England, More was best known for Utopia, a novel describing an imaginary society located in a new world, featuring religious toleration, a humanist education for all, and a communal ownership. Michel de Montaigne was an influential writer of the French Renaissance, known for popularizing the essay as a literary genre. The Northern Renaissance was not possible without the printing press, invented by Johannes Gutenberg. The Gutenberg press allowed the ideas of the Renaissance humanists to diffuse across Europe and promoted the growth of the vernacular literature and national cultures. This invention also undermined the authority of the court, such as through Luther's revolutionary ideas. Moving on to the art, the distinct characteristic of the Northern Renaissance was the oil paintings, enabling artists to depict reality precisely. Some key artists included Jan van Eyck, Albrecht Dürer, and Hans Holbein the Younger. Thank you guys for tuning in into this episode. In the next lesson, we'll be talking about the new monarchs. Everyone, welcome back to another lecture on the GDB lecture course combining Neo4j and European history. Today, our topic is the new monarchs. First, the rise of the new monarchs. The difference between these new monarchs with medieval kings is that medieval kings received most of their income from their own estates and money from their vassals. And they waged wars with armies and vassals because their military service was exchanged for that land. However, new monarchs are different because these monarchs retained their feudal income, but they relied more on taxes from their towns, merchants, and peasants. These monarchs also created professional armies paid by the royal treasury, and the new monarchs created a more centralized administrative bureaucracy that relied more on educated and loyal middle class officials. These new monarchs also created a new relationship with the Catholic Church. The reason why these new monarchs became such a great deal was the innovation was due to many reasons, one of them being the innovation in military weapons. And this obviously increased the death rate of battle. and also the growth of new cities, leading to a more prosperous middle class, and also development of more new centralized administration. The new monarchs were grew to be very prominent in several empires, European empires, such as in France, England, and Spain. In France, we have Charles VII, where he reigned from 1422 to 1461, and Charles VII concluded the Hundred Years' War by expelling the English from French, and he strengthened royal finances through taxes such as the taille, which is on land, and the gabelle, which is on salt. And these taxes were the main source of royal income for the next 3 centuries. And he also combined the cavalry and archers to form Europe's first permanent royal army, leading to many successful castle sieges in just 1 year. He also established a royal council, he using middle class merchants as his officials. The king that came after Charles VII was Louis the XI, and he reigned from 1461 to 1483. He earned a nickname called the Spider King because of his treacherous character and ruthless power. And one of the anecdotes from under his reign was he imprisoned a disloyal cardinal in a small cage for 11 years. He also encouraged economic growth by producing new industries such as silk. The king after that, Francis I, he reigned from 1515 to 1547, and he was the first French king to be called Your Majesty. And he reached an agreement with Pope Leo X in the Concordat of Bologna, in 1516, which authorized the king to nominate bishops, abbots, and other high officials of the Catholic Church in France. Moving on, we have England. Henry VII, he reigned from 1485 to 1509, and he had created a special court called the Star Chamber. And this was a political weapon to try prominent nobles. And in these sessions, there was no right to appeal, no juries, and no witnesses. And he used the justice of peace to extend royal authority into the local shires. He also encouraged the wool industry and expanded the English merchant marine. The Henry VIII, who reigned from 1509 to 1547, he declared the king as the supreme head of the Church of England and severed England's ties with the Catholic Church. And he also dissolved the monasteries and confiscated the land and wealth. And Henry VIII was also famous for killing all his wives. We'll talk more about it later. In Spain, which is also called the Iberian Peninsula, was separated for a long time until Ferdinand and Isabella. And the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella united the Iberian Peninsula, and the first thing they did was to reduce the number of nobles in the royal council. They then completed Reconquista, which conquered Granada and incorporated into the Spanish kingdom. Isabella also decreed the Spain as a Christian state, and they used the Inquisition in order to maintain religious conformity. And this led to the issuing edict expelling all Jews from Spain and demanding all Muslims adopt Christianity or also leave Spain. These rise of the new monarchs led to a competitive state system, where the new monarchs had to practice modern diplomacy, encourage negotiation in order to prevent wars, and introduce balance of power politics in order to stay in power but also not suffer severe losses. Thank you for tuning in into this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll be talking about the age of exploration and the commercial revolution. Hey everyone, welcome back to the history lesson, your European history part of the GDB course combining European history with Neo4j. And my name is Ivan. Today we'll be talking about the age of exploration and the commercial revolution. So what's important about this age is the Renaissance spirit of individualism, where the explorers who contributed most to the age of exploration had the spirit of individualism and curiosity that was similar to Renaissance artists and humanist scholars. So the biggest thing driving the age of exploration and the commercial revolution was the spices and the profits that accompanied that discovery, and things like Chinese ginger, Moroccan cloves, and nutmeg. These things were high in demand and low in supply. So usually the Europeans would want access to the markets that have those spices, which is typically Asia. However, Muslims and Venetians controlled this trade route. So European, such as the Spanish and Portuguese, wanted direct access to these markets, but not the same way the Muslims did. Anyways, there's also other motivations such as cash crops, more famously grown in the Caribbean and in the New World, such as sugar and tobacco and cotton. Next, we have Christianity, and since the Europeans were very Christian, they wanted to spread their religion throughout the world in their empire. And last but not least, new technology. New technology enabled these European explorers to explore new corners of the world, including the caravel, a type of ship, and the magnetic compass and astrolabe, ability to determine where exactly they were. So the Portuguese were a very prominent empire during this time. So first we have Prince Harry the Navigator, and this prince organized voyage along the west coast of Africa in order to find gold, but also slaves. And some key explorers under Prince Henry, and his descendants were Bartolomé Diaz, who rounded the Cape of Good Hope, Vasco da Gama, who reached the India, and Pedro Cabral, who discovered Brazil. And these discoveries enabled Portuguese to establish many commercial trading ports and also led to the end of the Venetian and Muslim monopoly of trading Asia. Next up, we have the Spanish, and most notably the explorer named Christopher Columbus. And he discovered the Caribbean islands, part of the New World. And his voyages helped propel Spain into the forefront of European exploration. And after Christopher Columbus, we do have Hernando Cortez, who conquered the Aztec Empire in Mexico, and Francisco Pizarro, who conquered the Incas in Peru. And this led to the discovery of Spanish America, and where the indigenous people were converted to Christianity and became subjects of the Spanish king. This also led to the Columbian Exchange, where a lot of things were exchanged between the New World and the Old World. Most notably, we have diseases spread to the New World by the European explorers, which decimated the indigenous population, while the new Old World received many new crops and raw materials from the New World. We also have slaves from Africa, which are generally transported to the New World to grow these cash crops, and the raw materials then are sent back to Europe. Next, we have the Commercial Revolution. And the Commercial Revolution was mostly driven by new ocean trade routes, bringing in new raw materials and spices, and population growth, especially in already large cities, and the growing middle class with the price revolution, since the influx of gold and silver from all these discoveries, explorations into the New World, and then also the new nation-centered economic system, where it became replacing the old town and guild framework. Some key features of the Commercial Revolution were entrepreneurs, like the Italian Medici and the German Fuggers. They led a new kind of economic leadership with the new industries caused by the printing press, reading with new markets of books and shipbuilding. And then next year, the domestic and putting out system, which increased production, where rural families would receive equipment to produce stuff like cloth and manufactured goods. And then next, we also have the joint stock companies, where many different families, merchants would pool money in order to maximize profits and limit risks into exploration and trade routes. Obviously, we're going to talk about mercantilism, which is the kind of policy that these rulers followed, where There are new colonies in the New World will export raw materials, and they will import finished goods from the factories in the mainland. And this will create a favorable balance of trade and theoretically help the economy of the mother country. Obviously, there are some consequences. So we have the decline of early commercial centers through the commercial revolution. But also we also have the rise of capitalism and the rise of the middle class and the bourgeoisie. Thank you guys for tuning in into this lecture about the age of exploration and the commercial revolution. Next, we're going to hop ship to Unit 2, where we're going to talk about the Age of Reformation and the Protestant Reformation.